A dress for $5, a kitchen gadget for $2, a pair of earrings cheaper than a cup of coffee and shipping included. On Temu and SHEIN, the prices can feel less like retail and more like a mistake. For shoppers facing rising living costs, the attraction is obvious. You tap a screen, wait several days, and a small package crosses an ocean to arrive at your door. There is no department store, no visible wholesaler, and often no brand you have ever heard of. But a product cannot be made, packaged, advertised, flown around the world, delivered, and sometimes refunded for nothing. So who pays the difference? The popular answer is usually simple: cheap Chinese labor. But that explanation is incomplete. China has manufactured low-cost goods for decades. Temu and SHEIN did not become global retail giants merely because they found inexpensive factories. Their real innovation was to rebuild the connection between the factory, the platform, and the consumer. They use data to identify demand faster. They remove layers of traditional retail. They force suppliers into intense competition. They turn shopping into entertainment. They exploit, or in their preferred language, optimize, international shipping and customs rules. And in some cases, they move costs away from the price tag and onto suppliers, workers, regulators, the environment, or the future profitability of the platform itself. Temu and SHEIN are also not the same company. SHEIN grew primarily as an ultra-fast fashion retailer with an on-demand production network. Temu, launched by PDD Holdings in 2022, is a broad online marketplace selling products from many merchants and manufacturers. Their apps may feel similar, but the machinery behind them is different. Today, we are going behind the screen. How can these companies sell products so cheaply? What happens inside the factories and warehouses? Why did an obscure customs rule become central to their global expansion? And what costs remain invisible until someone else has to pay them? Behind Temu and SHEIN, the hidden supply chain of ultra-cheap products. The first secret is that SHEIN and Temu solve different retail problems. Traditional fashion companies plan collections months in advance. Designers predict what customers will want, place large factory orders, ship inventory to warehouses and stores, then discount whatever fails to sell. The system creates economies of scale, but it also creates risk. If a company orders 100,000 dresses in the wrong color, the mistake becomes a warehouse full of unsold fabric. SHEIN reverses the process. It monitors search behavior, clicks, social media trends, and early sales. Instead of beginning with a huge production run, suppliers may start with only 100 or 200 units of a new style. If the item performs well, SHEIN quickly orders more. If shoppers ignore it, production can stop before the company accumulates a mountain of inventory. This is often called the small order, quick response model. Temu is different. It is closer to a global online bazaar. Its merchants sell clothing, tools, toys, electronics, home products, beauty items, pet accessories, and almost anything else that can fit inside a parcel. Under Temu's original fully managed model, a Chinese supplier could provide the product and send inventory to a domestic warehouse, while the platform handled international pricing, marketing, logistics, customer service, and much of the consumer relationship. That gave Temu enormous control. The platform could compare similar products, select sellers willing to accept low prices, and present the result to global shoppers through one interface. As trade rules changed, Temu expanded semi-managed and local-to-local models. In those arrangements, merchants may hold stock in overseas warehouses and take on more responsibility for fulfillment. The storefront still says Temu, but the route behind the order may be completely different from one product to the next. SHEIN has also expanded beyond its own fashion label by hosting third-party marketplace sellers in some countries. The two companies are gradually moving toward each other, but their original logic remains distinct. SHEIN is a demand-sensing fashion supply chain. Temu is a price-optimizing marketplace. Neither model would work without China's manufacturing clusters. Around Guangzhou, thousands of businesses specialize in fabric dyeing, zippers, buttons, pattern making, sewing, printing, packaging, photography, and delivery. In other regions, similar clusters produce electronics, toys, lighting, kitchenware, hardware, wigs, shoes, and household goods. These are not simply individual factories, they are ecosystems. A clothing workshop can source fabric, adjust a pattern, replace a zipper, print labels, and find extra sewing capacity within a small geographic area. A gadget manufacturer can obtain plastic molds, circuit boards, batteries, screws, packaging, and export services through nearby suppliers. This density reduces time and cost. If a SHEIN style suddenly becomes popular, the supplier does not need to build an entire production system from zero. It can draw on a network of specialized workshops. If a Temu seller sees demand for a new phone accessory, factories may already produce a similar item for the Chinese market. The platforms connect this industrial flexibility to global demand. That is why factory direct is partly true. Removing importers, wholesalers, physical stores, and some brand overhead can dramatically reduce the final price. A conventional retailer may pay for seasonal design teams, international showrooms, store rent, inventory held for months, and multiple profit margins. Temu and SHEIN replace much of that structure with software, centralized logistics, digital advertising, and supplier networks. But factory direct can also be marketing language. There may still be subcontractors, trading companies, logistics providers, warehouses, and platform fees between the worker and the shopper. The chain is not necessarily shorter in every physical sense. It is shorter in who controls the customer and who is allowed to take a margin. The platform sits at the center, and everyone else competes for access. Inventory is one of fashion's most expensive problems. Before a customer buys a shirt in a traditional store, the retailer has already made a large bet. It chose the design, ordered the sizes, shipped the stock, rented the shelf, and paid employees to sell it. The price of successful products must help cover all the unsuccessful ones. SHEIN tries to reduce that hidden tax. Its digital system collects rapid feedback from the app: which colors receive clicks, which items enter shopping carts, which sizes sell first, which search terms are growing. Suppliers receive orders through connected software, produce small batches, and replenish winning items quickly. This does not mean an algorithm designs every dress, and it does not eliminate human judgment. Designers, buyers, pattern makers, workshop owners, and workers still make the system function. But data shortens the distance between a customer signal and a factory decision. When it works, SHEIN has less unwanted inventory to clear at the end of a season. It can offer an enormous variety because each experiment begins small. Thousands of new listings act like thousands of tests. Shoppers collectively decide which ones scale. This is both efficient and controversial. SHEIN argues that on-demand production reduces overproduction and waste compared with traditional fashion forecasting. There is logic in that claim. Producing 200 unwanted dresses is better than producing 20,000. But critics point to the other side of the equation. An extremely high number of styles can encourage constant browsing and disposable consumption. Even if waste per design falls, total environmental impact can rise when the entire system sells more garments, uses synthetic fibers, ships by air, and trains consumers to treat clothing as temporary. Efficiency does not automatically equal sustainability. It depends on what the efficiency allows society to consume. Temu attacks a different cost: the supplier's margin. For many products, dozens of factories can make something similar. Temu's system compares prices and performance, then gives traffic to offers it considers competitive. Under the fully managed model, suppliers have described sending goods to Temu while the platform played a major role in deciding the overseas retail price. This creates a reverse auction. Instead of consumers bidding more, manufacturers compete to accept less. A seller with idle machinery may agree to a very low margin to keep the factory running. Another may use leftover materials or existing designs. A new business may accept losses to earn rankings and order volume. A factory may hope that scale will eventually make the economics work. Temu's consumer promise, "Shop like a billionaire," is supported by this competition below the screen. But the pressure can become extreme. Chinese merchants have publicly protested Temu's penalty and refund policies. Some sellers told journalists that they faced demands for lower prices, after-sales deductions, or fines they considered unfair. In 2024, groups of merchants gathered at Temu offices in Guangzhou to complain. Temu has argued that its model removes middlemen and creates global opportunities for manufacturers. That is also true for many participants. A small factory that could never advertise in America or Europe can reach millions of consumers through the platform. The question is how the value is divided. If the platform controls visibility, price comparisons, customer data, refunds, and penalties, the manufacturer may gain access to the world while losing control over its own economics. Low prices are partly the result of efficiency. They are also the result of bargaining power. Now consider a simple possibility: the price may not cover the full cost of winning you as a customer. Technology companies often subsidize growth. Ride-hailing apps once offered trips below cost. Food delivery platforms paid for coupons. Streaming services spent heavily before becoming profitable. The strategy is to build habit and scale first, then improve the economics later. Temu's rise followed this playbook. Its parent company, PDD Holdings, reported more than $15 billion in sales and marketing expenses in 2024 across its businesses, a 35% increase from the previous year. The company does not publicly separate every Temu promotion from its other operations, so outside estimates of profit or loss should be treated cautiously. Temu has disputed claims that its prices depend on unsustainable losses. Still, the marketing is visible. Major television campaigns, online advertisements, influencer deals, referral rewards, free gifts, coupons, and app games all cost money. These features serve two purposes. First, they reduce the effective price. Second, they increase engagement. Countdown clocks create urgency. Prize wheels turn discounts into entertainment. Progress bars encourage users to invite friends. Personalized recommendations make a marketplace with millions of products feel like an endless treasure hunt. SHEIN uses a related system of points, flash sales, notifications, influencer content, and constantly changing inventory. Shopping becomes a feed rather than a planned visit. This matters because the consumer pays with more than money. Attention, behavioral data, referrals, and repeated app visits help finance the platform's growth. The item is cheap partly because the transaction is also acquiring a user. For years, one customs term explained a major part of the price advantage: de minimis. In the United States, packages valued at $800 or less could historically enter under a simplified process without ordinary customs duties. The rule existed long before Temu and SHEIN, but direct-to-consumer e-commerce transformed its scale. Instead of importing a container of clothing into an American warehouse, declaring the shipment, paying duties, and distributing it through stores, a platform could send millions of individually addressed parcels directly to shoppers. Each package was small, but together they formed a massive retail channel. This lowered duties and reduced the need to hold large amounts of inventory in the destination country. It also made inspection difficult. Customs systems designed for a manageable flow of low-value parcels faced an avalanche of packages. Critics called this a loophole. Supporters argued that the rule reduced bureaucracy and kept prices low for ordinary households. Either way, it became central to the economics of cross-border shopping. Then the policy changed. The United States ended duty-free de minimis treatment for products from China and Hong Kong on May 2, 2025. Later that year, it suspended duty-free treatment for low-value shipments from all countries, with limited exceptions under other provisions. The impact was immediate. Temu shifted more U.S. listings toward products already stored in American warehouses and accelerated its local seller model. SHEIN also had to adjust pricing, logistics, sourcing, and fulfillment. This reveals an important truth: the original price was never created by factories alone. It depended on a legal and logistical architecture. Change the customs rule and the supply chain changes with it. Europe has also tightened scrutiny of low-value e-commerce shipments and moved toward additional fees and stronger enforcement. The era of nearly frictionless small parcels is ending. Temu and SHEIN will not necessarily disappear. They may become more like conventional retailers, using regional warehouses, consolidated freight, local sellers, and more formal import processes. But every added layer makes the $5 dress harder to maintain. Returns expose another strange feature of ultra-cheap commerce. For a $2 item, international return shipping may cost more than the product itself. Inspection, repackaging, and restocking may also exceed its value. That is why platforms or sellers sometimes issue refunds without asking for the item back. From the customer's perspective, this feels generous. From the supply chain's perspective, the cost has not vanished. It may be absorbed by the platform as customer acquisition. It may be deducted from a merchant's account. It may be covered by higher margins on other products. Or it may appear as waste when an item cannot be resold. Traditional retailers build return costs into prices. Ultra-low-cost platforms use data and strict seller rules to decide where the loss should land. When merchants complain about after-sales penalties, they are often fighting over this exact question. Who owns the risk after the package leaves the factory? The consumer sees a free return. The supplier may see a fine. The environment sees another product with no economical route back into inventory. No investigation of ultra-low prices can ignore labor. But this subject requires precision. A cheap product is not proof of forced labor. Low prices can come from automation, industrial clustering, thin margins, cheap materials, low inventory, subsidies, and tax treatment. It is irresponsible to label every worker or factory without evidence. At the same time, the speed and price pressure of these systems create serious labor risks. SHEIN relies on a large network of third-party suppliers rather than owning every workshop. Independent investigations by the Swiss organization Public Eye reported extremely long working weeks at a small sample of supplier factories in Guangzhou. Its 2024 follow-up described 12-hour days, often 6 or 7 days a week. Conditions, it said, violated Chinese labor law and SHEIN-owned supplier code. SHEIN challenged the small sample size, but said it takes violations seriously. According to its 2024 sustainability report, the company conducted 288 on-site audits of China-based suppliers and subcontractors, covering about 95% of SHEIN-branded procurement value. It reported better audit grades than the previous year, and says it prohibits forced labor and child labor. Both facts can exist at once. A company can expand auditing while abuses continue in parts of a fragmented supplier network. Temu faces a different traceability problem because it hosts an enormous range of independent merchants. A 2023 investigation by a U.S. House committee argued that Temu lacked an adequate system to ensure compliance with the ICA Forced Labor Prevention Act and described a high risk of forced labor contamination. Temu rejected the allegations as ungrounded and has stated that merchants must follow applicable laws and platform standards. The central problem is visibility. When thousands of sellers, subcontractors, material suppliers, and workshops enter a marketplace, a policy written at headquarters is only the first step. Meaningful compliance requires tracing raw materials, verifying factories, protecting workers who complain, publishing findings, and accepting that the cheapest supplier may carry the highest hidden risk. Speed makes that work harder, not less necessary. The same visibility problem applies to product safety. A conventional retailer imports large batches from known suppliers. That does not guarantee safety, but it creates identifiable checkpoints. On a marketplace with rapidly changing listings and thousands of merchants, unsafe products can appear faster than regulators or platforms remove them. The risks vary by category. A poorly made decorative object may simply break. A defective charger can cause fire or electric shock. A children's toy may contain restricted chemicals or detachable parts. Cosmetics and supplements raise additional concerns because the harm may not be immediately visible. European regulators have increased pressure on both companies. In July 2025, the European Commission preliminarily found that Temu had failed to properly assess the risk of illegal products on its platform. Consumer protection authorities have also challenged practices on Temu and SHEIN involving product information, discounts, pressure selling, and platform design. In 2026, the EU opened a formal Digital Services Act investigation into SHEIN over illegal product controls and potentially addictive features. These are regulatory findings and investigations, not proof that every product is unsafe. Both platforms say they invest in testing, seller verification, removals, and compliance, but ultra-low prices create a difficult equation. Testing, certification, traceability, durable materials, and accountable customer service all cost money. If the retail price approaches the cost of postage, consumers should ask which protections remain inside the product, and which exist only in the terms of service. For low-risk novelty items, a buyer may accept uncertainty. For chargers, helmets, baby products, cosmetics, or anything connected to health and safety, cheap can become expensive very quickly. SHEIN production model contains a genuine environmental advantage. Small initial batches can reduce unsold inventory. But the total system contains a genuine environmental danger. It makes buying more items easier than ever. Ultra-fast fashion uses large amounts of polyester and other synthetic fibers derived from fossil fuels. Dyeing, fabric production, packaging, and final disposal create emissions and pollution. Rapid replenishment and direct delivery have historically relied heavily on air freight, which is far more carbon-intensive than ocean shipping. Temu's product range adds electronics, plastics, batteries, household goods, and novelty items that may have short useful lives. Millions of individual packages require bags, labels, sorting, customs processing, and last-mile delivery. Both companies promote environmental initiatives. SHEIN has announced emissions targets, supplier efficiency programs, recycled materials, resale efforts, and greater use of sea freight and trucking. Its 2024 report describes significant projects intended to avoid greenhouse gas emissions. Temu has supported shipment consolidation and other logistics efficiencies. The difficult question is not whether these programs exist. It is whether efficiency improvements can outrun growth. If each item creates 10% less impact but the system sells twice as many items, the planet still loses. And low prices affect behavior. When a shirt costs less than lunch, repairing it feels irrational. When a gadget fails, replacing it is easier than finding parts. The supply chain ends not at the front door, but at the landfill, recycling center, or drawer filled with objects nobody uses. The environmental cost is real even when it never appears on the receipt. Another hidden input is design itself. SHEIN and Temu offer an extraordinary number of products, but speed can create incentives to imitate what already works. Independent designers and established brands have accused sellers on both platforms of copying artwork, photographs, products, or clothing designs. The companies have faced lawsuits and say they maintain intellectual property complaint and removal systems. Marketplace scale makes enforcement difficult. A listing can disappear and return under another seller. Similar products may come from the same upstream factory. Some claims involve clear copies, others concern trends and basic designs that are difficult to own legally. But the economic principle is simple. Original design requires time, testing, failed prototypes, photography, and marketing. Copying the visible result can avoid part of that cost. When consumers ask why two products look similar, but one is dramatically cheaper, the answer may involve branding and middlemen. But it may also involve who paid to create the idea. The cheapest supply chain can sometimes be the one that arrives second. We can now answer the question from the beginning. How can a product on Temu or SHEIN be so cheap? Part of the answer is legitimate efficiency. China's manufacturing clusters are fast and flexible. Digital platforms remove traditional retail layers. SHEIN's small batch testing can reduce inventory mistakes. Temu gives factories direct access to international demand. Online stores avoid expensive physical locations. Data improves forecasting, and logistics networks consolidate enormous volumes. Part of the answer is aggressive strategy. Suppliers compete on price. Platforms spend heavily to acquire users. Coupons may subsidize the first order. App design turns attention and referrals into economic value. Sellers accept narrow margins in exchange for volume. Part of the answer was regulation. For years, low-value parcel rules reduced duties and simplified customs. When the United States removed that treatment, fulfillment shifted toward local warehouses and formal importing, showing that policy had been embedded inside the price. And part of the answer is cost transfer. Workers may absorb pressure through excessive hours. Merchants may absorb refunds, penalties, and unsold stock. Designers may pay to defend copied work. Regulators and taxpayers fund product inspection. The climate absorbs emissions. Consumers absorb the risk that an item fails early or proves unsafe. Not every product carries every hidden cost. Some Temu purchases are useful and durable. Some SHEIN suppliers comply with strong standards. A higher price at a Western retailer does not guarantee ethical labor, environmental responsibility, or original design. Many conventional brands use the same manufacturing regions and face similar problems. The difference is intensity. Temu and SHEIN built systems that compress price, production time, and consumer attention at unprecedented scale. Every weakness in the supply chain therefore moves faster and reaches farther. The story of Temu and SHEIN is not a simple morality tale about good consumers and bad companies. Millions of people use these platforms because money is tight. Affordable clothing and household goods matter. A parent buying school supplies at the lowest price is not responsible for designing global trade rules. Nor is every expensive brand automatically more ethical. But low prices change what we notice. Traditional retail hides factories behind a brand. Temu and SHEIN hide an entire economic system behind an app. The screen makes the product feel weightless. No distance, no warehouse, no customs officer, no worker, no waste. Just a picture, a countdown, and a button. The supply chain is real even when it is invisible. And it is now changing. Tariff reforms, product safety enforcement, labor scrutiny, environmental pressure, and local warehouse strategies are forcing both companies to mature. They may remain cheaper than traditional retailers, but the original era of almost frictionless ultra-low-cost shipping is becoming harder to sustain. The future will test whether their greatest innovations, fast demand detection, flexible manufacturing, and direct global commerce, can survive without depending on the weakest parts of the model. Can suppliers earn sustainable margins? Can workers receive lawful hours and protection? Can platforms trace materials and remove dangerous products before they reach a child? Can fashion respond quickly without encouraging endless waste? Can a bargain remain a bargain after the true costs are counted? Those are not questions only for Temu and SHEIN. Amazon, TikTok Shop, AliExpress, fast fashion brands, and conventional retailers are adopting parts of the same system. The supply chain exposed by these two companies may become the supply chain of global retail itself. So the next time a $5 dress or $2 gadget appears on your screen, the most useful question is not, how can it be this cheap? It is, which cost has been removed, and which cost has simply been moved somewhere I cannot see. Have you bought something from Temu or SHEIN that was surprisingly good or surprisingly bad? And would you pay more for stronger labor, safety, and environmental standards if those standards could be verified? Tell us in the comments. If you enjoyed this investigation, Subscribe for more stories about the systems behind the products we use every day. Thanks for watching.